How to Write in 4th Grade, Volume 9 of 11. Copyright 2014, Luke Sullivan. A narrative. Tell about a time you did something nice for someone. Common Core standards addressed: 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, 3A, 3C, 3D, 4, and 5. Time needed: 2 days of 45 minutes. Materials needed: blank paper, lined sheets of paper, narrative structure worksheet, class writing paper. You have worked with all 3 writing structures that we are going to study this year: the narrative, the persuasive, and the informational or expository. Each has a predictable structure that makes it easy for the reader to understand your writing. The next 3 writing assignments will introduce new writing skills using these same structures. We'll begin with the narrative structure. The prompt for our narrative structure is: think about a time when you were given the opportunity to do something nice for someone. Write a story that tells what you had to do and how it made you feel. Begin with a lined sheet of paper. Take 2 minutes to write down all the times you've done something nice for someone. It could be a very big, nice thing, like helping someone paint their room, or it could be a small, nice thing, like bringing coffee to Dad early on a Saturday morning. Choose one example from your list that you'll share with the class. Listen as your classmates explain what happened. Notice when they give details and examples. Do they talk about the setting? Do they use organizing words like first, later, as a result, at the end? Write your list. Look at your list of nice things. Is there one on your list that you can explain, give details or examples, and that has a setting you're familiar with? Choose one of these for your story. This is the basic narrative worksheet you were introduced to in our first 3 lessons. All stories have these basic elements: a setting, a main character, a beginning, a middle to the story, and an end. Remember, the goal of a story or a narrative is to generate an emotional response. Looking at this graph, we can see the emotional response from the reader as they read your story. There's a strong emotional response near the end of your story at the climax, and another strong emotional response at the very beginning of your story, in the attention-grabbing beginning. For today's lesson, the skill we're going to work on is your attention-grabbing beginning. We'll look at 5 attention-grabbing techniques. Ask a question, use a quote, ask a riddle, make a strong announcement, give an anecdote or a small story. I'm going to choose "Bring Dad a cup of coffee" as the nice thing I've done for this essay. Listen as I use each technique to grab your attention and say, "Read my story." A quote: "Your father has a big day ahead of him. Make sure he gets up on time." So said my mom as she headed out the door for work. Ask a question. Do you know how to make a cup of coffee? It's not as easy as you think it is. I found that out when I tried to make my dad a cup. Make a strong announcement. Don't ever use a kitchen appliance if there's no adult around. The consequences could be severe. Listen to what happened when I tried to be nice to my dad. Give an anecdote or small story. Once I tried fixing my bike when it had a flat tire. I got grease all over my shirt. I lost the bolts that kept the tire on, and I broke my dad's screwdriver. But that's nothing compared to what happened when I decided to make Dad a cup of coffee. A riddle. Some like me hot and some like me cold. Some prefer mild, others only bold. What am I? I remember once when the answer to this riddle got me in trouble with my dad. Each of these techniques acts to grab the reader's attention and entices them to read the rest of your story. Choose a technique that you'll use to start your story. You won't write it now, you'll just choose it. Write your name at the top of a narrative structure worksheet. Remember, writers gather lots of elements before they begin writing. You're going to fill in as many details as possible for your narrative structure. Begin by writing down which technique you would like to try for your attention-grabbing beginning. The next section to complete is the setting. Remember, the setting is a picture before the story begins, not at the climax or the most emotional part. If you need to, get a blank piece of paper and draw a picture of the setting. Then use the setting worksheet to gather all the details. Be sure to include 4 adjective-noun pairs, the character that you're going to describe in your story is the person you did something nice for. Complete this description of a person using adjective-noun pairs about their face, their hair, or their clothes. Identify some behaviors and character traits for this person. What happened at the beginning of your story? Don't write out the story. Just put fragments that will serve as placeholders or reminders about what to write. Remember, the action at this part begins at the setting you wrote about. What happened in the middle of your story? Again, don't write out the story. Just put fragments that will remind you about what to write later on. The middle usually includes the nice thing that you did and any reaction from the person you did the nice thing for. What happened at the end? This usually includes how you felt about doing the nice thing. Reflecting and saying how you felt about what happened signals to your reader that your story is done. Completing the worksheet allows you to gather most or all of the elements before assembling your writing piece. Writers always do this. Writing a setting and a character description were done in more detail in lessons 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. Some students may need to refer back to those lessons to complete paragraphs 2 and 3. They may also still prefer to use those graphic organizers. Here's a completed narrative worksheet for my example of bringing Dad a cup of coffee. Each piece of the narrative structure will end up being its own paragraph or paragraphs. Take a piece of the class writing paper and write down your name and date. In the section for writing skills, write attention-grabbing beginning, organizing words, details of feelings. The first paragraph will be your attention-grabbing beginning. Notice how I mention my dad in each prompt. This signals to the reader that I'll tell more about him later. Write your paragraph using the attention-grabbing technique you've chosen. Be sure to include the name of your character. The next paragraph is your setting. Sentences providing descriptive details of where and when, along with adjective-noun pairs, create mental pictures for your reader. It's easier for them to become emotionally involved in your story. Write your setting. You are using the person you did something nice for as the character you'll describe in your story. In my example, Dad is the character from my paragraph. Write sentences for your descriptive details and for the behavior and traits introducing your character. The next paragraph is the beginning of your story. This section will include your decision to do something nice. Write the beginning of your story. The middle section of your story is where you tell what you had to do while doing the nice thing. You'll also include the reaction of the character you described in paragraph 3. This middle section of your story will have the most sentences. Be sure to include enough content to make it satisfying to your reader. For our exercise, I have allotted 1 paragraph, but it could be more for your story. The ending paragraph is where you describe how you felt. Remember, the prompt asks you to tell how it made you feel. This will also signal the end of your story. Write your ending. Now you need to check your story. Go back to the beginning and quietly read. If one of your sentences doesn't sound right, then there probably is something wrong. Fix it. Go to the top of your paper and look at the writing skills. Do you have an attention-grabbing beginning paragraph? Did you use organizing words to connect your paragraphs? Finally, did you give details of how you felt? Good job!